Hey, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or wherever the heck exactly you are. Welcome to this episode of Live and Off the Record. I'm trying something a little bit new, just like I did at the dinner table the other night, rather foolishly with the family. My 4-year-old daughter is now wandering around the house impersonating Michael Caine because my wife said something to me and I thought I'd be a little bit smart, and I replied and said something along the lines of, "My name is Michael Caine." And so my 4-year-old daughter is now wandering around the house, "My name is Michael Caine." And she also does a Bane impersonation that I gave to her as well at another meal. It's hilarious. "The fire is rising, brother." 4-year-old wandering around the house saying that. Okay, so welcome along. We're doing something a little bit different here now today. It's a bit of a trial. And what I thought I'd like to do with these live streams is try and, where I can, bring on a guest and have just a bit more of a laid-back chat about stuff, about who they are, and also sort of some of the big issues that are tracking around at the time. So my first guest that I've lined up to do this with is none other than Matthew Kadish. So let me just bring on Matthew here now. Matt, there you go. You're on screen. Welcome aboard, mate.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be your guinea pig here.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say the first cab off the rank, the guiney pig.
Yeah.
We're going to take.
If you fail with me, no one's going to care.
Oh no, that's not true. So what we're going to do is, sorry, I might be a bit loud, aren't I? So I'll turn myself down a little bit there. So what we're going to do is we'll just have a conversation, guys. Chuck in your comments and questions as you go. We'll do our best to answer them. We're going to talk about a variety of topics today that we thought are worthy of conversing about. Just before we do that, just a couple of administrative things, and then I'll throw to Matthew to give you his socials and how you can follow him. But I am obviously Brendan Malone at Left Foot Media. If you are not already subscribing, and even if you are subscribing and you don't have the notifications bell on, please go and do that on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notifications bell. That's really helpful. And if you'd like to support the channel and all that we're doing here, you can find there's a chyron below me here somewhere. I'll point to it. Left Foot Media at Patreon. Yes, I'm still stuck on Patreon. Subscribe Star's not working properly for me, unfortunately. And also there's a PayPal link in the description below, so you can drop a PayPal tip in the hat anytime you like. Matthew, how do people follow you, support your work, stuff like that?
So if you're on Twitter, you can find me on there at Matthew Kadish. It's just my name, Kadish. You can also go to kadishbooks.com. That'll take you to my Amazon page where you can see some of the books I've written and published. And I also do a weekly movie podcast called the Salty Nerd Podcast. And it's me and a bunch of friends. We get together and we do deep dives into movies that kind of center around a new theme. So if you want to check out that podcast, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Just go to saltynerdpodcast.com. It'll take you right to your preferred podcast directory, and you can listen to all our episodes. I think we're up to episode 40 right now, so we've got quite a bit of episodes on there. If you're a fan of movies and like to talk about them, and I kind of focus more on the filmmaking and industry insider stuff on it, and my other friends are a little bit more humorous and irreverent than I am when it comes to talking about film. So it's a good mix.
You're the straight man, Matthew, as they say.
I am. I'm the professor. I sit there and I educate them about the background of the movie and like how it was made and the people who made it and the history behind the film, and they're like, well, I liked it or I didn't like it. So,
I was just thinking, actually, we're probably not allowed to say the term straight man soon. That'll be some sort of thought crime or hate crime.
Canceled. How dare you, heteronormative people?
That's it. The YouTube algorithm is just going spastic right now, trying to figure out what category to put us in. So that brings me to an important point. Before I get into that, just a reminder, folks, for those who've just jumped in, if you've got questions, comments, chuck. Whoa, and there goes a whole glass of water. That's all right. If you've got questions or comments, chuck them in, and we will do our best to get to them. So before we go any further, though, Matthew, you're a writer. That's right, isn't it?
So I've been told.
Yeah. Now, you've written novels, the Earthman Jack series. Tell us what got you into writing. I imagine writing must be quite a hard thing to do. I've always thought it'd be great to do, but it just seems a lot of patience and commitment required to write a novel, at least.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it hard, but I would call it intensive. Like you really need to work to complete a novel. I was originally I got into writing through filmmaking because I wanted to be at first I wanted to be a special effects artist, and then I wanted to be a director, and then I wanted to create the stories that I wanted to direct. And so when I went to film school and stuff like that, I got into screenwriting, and I was a finalist in the Nichols Fellowship Screenplay contest one year, and that kind of opened the doors to Los Angeles, where I got invited to attend the feature development program at the LA Film School. And through there, I wrote some screenplays, none of which were ever produced or anything like that. And after a while, I kind of got tired of not having anything to show for my work, because when you write a screenplay, it either gets made into a movie or it sits on a shelf. Yeah. And so I was like, I'd like to create something that people could consume that doesn't have to be turned into a movie. And so one year, I made a New Year's resolution to actually finish a novel. And that was my first Earthman Jack novel. And I worked on it kind of in my spare time off and on over the course of 5 years. And I published it back in 2012. And since then, I've been a full-time novelist, where I've got 5 books in the Earthman Jack series out. I've published 2 books this year so far. I've got a 3rd scheduled for sometime in September, and then a new Earthman Jack book that I'd like to get out before the end of the year. So now that I've published a few books, it's getting a little bit easier to write these things. So
you're becoming a pro, an old hand at it.
I guess. Or someone who's just eluding himself on a regular basis.
Do you have a process? Do you say, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to spend 5 hours writing this chapter, or do you come and go? How do you make it work?
So I always start with an outline. I always found that if you know what you're going to write, you save a lot of time and energy, because there are some writers out there who just kind of make it up as they go, and they end up having to ditch entire chapters that don't fit into the story, or go back and fix plot holes and stuff like that. So I take a very meta approach to writing, where I'll sit there and I'll look at all the beats I need to hit, and all the act breaks and stuff like that. And that's my screenwriting training, I guess, because screenwriting is very structured. Yeah. And then once I have my outline done, I'll go and I'll just start writing chapters as they inspire me. I don't write in order. I kind of jump around just as the inspiration hits me, and eventually I get the thing done. It's just a question of being kind of diligent about it. Writing, there are some people who can sit down and write every day. I know, Stephen King, for instance, he writes 6,000 words a day or something crazy like that.
Yeah, he's insane, and he's still going too, right, at his age.
Yep, he sure is. And I'm just I can't write every day. Sometimes writing is thinking about what you're going to write. So there are times where I'll sit there, I'll kind of do research, or I'll brainstorm ideas and stuff like that. And that'll be my writing for the day. And then other days I'll write 10 pages of manuscript, and call it a chapter, type thing. So it's just a question of being consistent, I guess, is the best way I can describe it in writing a novel. As long as you're consistent and dedicated to finishing it, you can write it. There's this famous kind of writing philosophy by Robert A. Heinlein, the guy who wrote Starship Troopers and stuff like that. He's a very prolific science fiction author, and he had 5 rules for writing, and it was later amended to 6 rules. And it was: you must write, you must finish what you write, you must not excessively rewrite, you must publish what you write, you must market what you write, and you must do it all over again. And those 6 simple rules have been kind of my guiding light in my novelist career. So I got to write, and I got to finish what I write, and I got to get it out there, and got to have it making money, and then I got to do it all over again. So
the life of a writer. Yeah, Stephen King impresses me. That guy, just prolific. His politics are a bit wayward lately, but man, he can write. Some of it's funny. I think if you're a fan of Stephen King, I like. Some of his stuff is just phenomenal and is on my shelf. Other stuff wouldn't touch with a barge pole. I think the coked up phase was a bit odd.
He's a very uneven novelist. Famously, when he was writing The Stand, he was just kind of making it up as he went. He got it. He wrote himself into a corner. He got writer's block, and he couldn't figure out how to end the movie, how to end the story. And so eventually he just I'm just gonna blow up a bomb and kill everyone, and then went on from there. So he Stephen King's interesting because like he's great at coming up with the concepts for his story, and he's good with the initial kind of like hook of the story. But then like as it goes along, he kind of loses steam on a pretty regular basis, and so he's kind of an uneven author in my opinion, but he's still pretty good.
Yeah, can't beat a bit of King. Welcome aboard those who've just joined us. CJam, great to see you. Jeremy, how are you guys? Yes, it has been a while since we've live streamed, to my great shame. Hopefully, does everyone is the audio okay for everyone? We're not getting a weird repeat here. I'm just trying to monitor things at the end. It's a little bit hard to tell, but I think we're okay. Feel free to chuck in your comments and questions. Speaking of writing, I thought of when you were talking about writing and being prepared and everything else, I thought of none other than Ryan Johnson. and well, it's good to have an outline. G'day Hacky Smack, good to see you too. Now, he says, it's glad to see you. There's a handsome face I've missed. Well, mate, if I'm handsome, then you need to get out a bit more, my friend.
He was talking about me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's true, actually. Sorry. Apologies. Okay, so let's talk about Star Wars now, because that was one of the main things we wanted to... Actually, no, before we talk about Star Wars, have you watched anything lately? Because there's been a real glut of television. People are basically watching the end of what they had to watch. Coronavirus has killed any new writing. And films and everything. It's all up in the air right now, right? So what have you watched anything interesting? Films, movies, television shows lately?
Yeah, lots. So I mentioned earlier that I do the Salty Nerd podcast, which is a podcast where me and my friends get together and we talk about movies and TV and stuff like that. And so every week I have to watch at least like 3 movies and maybe an extra movie or a TV show or something like that to talk about it on the podcast. But ever since the lockdown, like we had a great schedule for the beginning of 2020, and then once the lockdowns happened, it's kind of thrown everything out of whack. But I've watched some good stuff. So, for instance, I saw The Invisible Man.
Oh, what did you think?
I really liked it. I thought it was a good movie. So I recommend that. I've been watching some TV shows lately. I just finished Warrior Nun, the new Netflix original series.
Yeah.
And it's based on a comic book, and it's about this girl who gets an angel's halo and gives her special demon killing powers, and she's recruited by this secret order of nuns who are dedicated to fighting the forces of evil. And so I just finished that. I started the second season of another Netflix original series called The Order.
Yeah.
And the first season was okay, but the second season's actually really good.
Yeah.
So I'm into that. I'm kind of waiting.
What's The Order about?
So The Order is about a college kid who finds out that there's a secret order of magic users at his college.
Cool.
And he infiltrates them to try to get revenge for his mother's death, because the guy who leads the secret society, who's also his father, is responsible for his dead mother. And during the course of his infiltration, he becomes a werewolf, and he teams up with these other werewolves. And they werewolves,
as you do.
Yeah, and these werewolves, their mission, as werewolves, is to destroy magic, because magic can be used for evil purposes. Yeah. So it's basically werewolves versus magicians. Yeah. And the first season is it's pretty good. It's kind of saccharine in a way. It's not like what I'd call like really good television. Very Buffy the Vampire-esque. Yeah. That type of humor and stuff. But the second season so far, me and my girlfriend just started it. It's kind of stepped up its game. So now that we know the character.
Oh, you're frozen there, Matthew. Oh, is he back? Is he coming back? Come on, Matthew. Okay, nothing like. Oh, there he goes. You're back. You're back. You froze up, mate.
Okay, all right.
So where were you saying the second season was, and then you went,
Yeah, the second season kind of upped its game, and it's a much better show in the second season than it was in the first, at least in my opinion. Yeah, so like every week I'm watching like movies. Like we just got done with our Aliens episode, so there are 4 people on our podcast. One person chooses the topic for the week, and then the other 3 people choose a movie that we discuss. And so this week we talked about the 1987 Predator, We talked
Great
about
film.
Starship
Great
Troopers.
Yeah.
And we also talked about my pick, which was Bad Taste. Which
Peter Jackson.
Yeah, the guys haven't forgiven me for that one.
Had any of them seen it before?
Nope.
Oh, that is.
And,
I cut my teeth like Peter Jackson back in his New Zealand film school days.
Yeah, it was his first movie. He shot it over the course of 4 years.
That's
on the
right.
Weekends.
Because he was working at the post office during the week,
Yeah.
and then they just filmed it on the weekends.
Yeah, and when I was in high school, and I got really into the Evil Dead movies, and I kind of got into like the whole horror genre, especially horror comedy.
Yeah.
And I discovered Peter Jackson, and I think he had just made Heavenly Creatures at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
I went back and I watched Dead Alive, and I watched Bad Taste and stuff like that, and I was fascinated by his like at the time it was so innovative what he was doing. Like he was a one-man movie show. Like he built his own dollies, his own steady cams, his own cranes. He he did all of his own makeup effects, special effects. Like it was insane what he was able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so like I had a real appreciation for this movie, and I was like, well, this movie has aliens in it. I'm going to try to expand my friends' knowledge of film by making them watch this.
Yeah.
All three of them hated it.
Did they?
They were like, we'll never forgive you for making us watch this movie. My girlfriend almost broke up with me because she hated this movie so much.
Oh,
and
man.
I had to sit there and kind of give them the film school explanation behind why Bad Taste is great and how we wouldn't have the Lord of the Rings if it weren't for Bad Taste.
No, and also the continuity, like there's that funny scene at the end with the purple car where they switch out the good car with an old Ford Escort and blow it up just at the last minute. And the I got a chunky bit. That was the bit that always got me in trouble. I got a chunky bit. If you haven't seen it, watch it. You'll soon discover what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it appeals to a very niche audience. But if you're a fan of like filmmaking and film school stuff, like when I first saw Bad Taste, I was so impressed because I was like, this is something that I could go out and do myself. And it was like one of the biggest movies to come out of New Zealand. It went to the Cannes Film Festival in 1988 and sold all the foreign territory rights, and it kind of launched Peter Jackson's career. Yeah. And even like the New Zealand Film Commission gave him like $230,000 to finish that movie, and he had spent like $26,000 of his own money on it. Yeah. And you can tell in the movie when he got that money because stuff starts blowing up. Yeah.
What's mate too? They renamed it. They rebranded it overseas, didn't they? It was called something else, I think. Or did they rebrand it? Well, no, it was his other one they rebranded. Something else he did. Something else. What's the one with the lawnmower?
Dead Alive.
Yeah, Dead Alive. Now that's not called Dead Alive. That's Brain Dead in New Zealand. That's the original title of that film.
Okay.
And I think for some reason that title must have been taken in the States or somewhere, so it was rebranded.
Well, I think Dead Alive is a funnier title. Personally.
But you're right. Like that film put Peter Jackson on the map. It kickstarted his career.
It was kind of a precursor to the Weta company that he set up because he was doing all those special effects himself.
Yeah. And Richard Taylor was a mate with him at that stage, and that goes on to like Wingnut Productions or Wingnut Films comes out of that. And those guys, some of those guys are still together. Like they're still working as a team all these years later. It's quite amazing, really.
Yeah, and I find the movie personally to be hilarious. Like the humor in it, I think is great. And Peter Jackson, he acts in the movie, he plays two different parts. And like I was watching it the other night, and there are these big action scenes in it, which are actually pretty impressive for someone with no budget. Because he constructed all the guns out of like wood and aluminum pipes, and painted them to look real, and put in the muzzle flashes, in post production, and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is the guy who filmed the Battle of Helm's Deep. Yeah. Like I'm seeing like the first glimpses of his action direction in this movie, and to me that's just fascinating. But my friends, they don't necessarily watch movies from a filmmaker's point of view. They watch them more from, I'm just a consumer of entertainment point of view, and they were not into this movie at all, unfortunately. and in fact, their opinion of my taste in movies dropped because of this. So,
Oh, mate, yeah, honestly, that's you've reignited the fires of nostalgia for me. When I was in high school, that movie came out. Was I in high school? I might have been just before I got to high school.
came out in '87.
No, I wasn't quite at high school yet, and I remember it was a cult classic around here. Everyone would wander around quoting lines from it. That I got a chunky bit. That when I watched that scene for the first time, it was hilarious. Yeah, and
Like it was the most innovative thing coming out of New Zealand at the time, and like it caught the attention of people in Hollywood, like Robert Zemeckis, who eventually ended up producing Peter Jackson's movies, brought him over for The Frighteners.
That's right.
And stuff like that, and it helped him get King Kong.
Well,
so like
I think it put New Zealand on the map too, because Frighteners was filmed just down the road from me here. At school holidays at the moment, I like to take the kids for a trip over to Littleton. It's about probably 45 minutes drive. That's where they filmed most of Frighteners. There's the what was the other one you mentioned before?
Dead Alive.
No. Before that, the Heavenly Creatures, which is about the two sisters who killed their mum here in Christchurch on those shady hills.
I thought they were like lesbian lovers.
Yeah, that's right. That was the accusation. It was kind of weird. It was a weird sort of thing. They don't talk to each other now apparently at all.
But Kate Winslet, that was her like big.
That's right, big breakthrough.
Debut.
Yeah, and so basically it put New Zealand on the map. And Peter Jackson has done so much for bringing the film industry. Obviously, Lord of the Rings. Then what was it? The Chronicles of Narnia came here. There's actually been a lot of. That was also. I'm pretty sure that paved the way for Zemeckis. Was it Zemeckis who filmed The Last Samurai?
Oh no, that was someone completely different.
No, yeah, who was it? I'm trying to.
I want to say like Toby Hooper, maybe. I'm not sure.
No, who did Flight? Did Zemeckis do Flight? That one with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I think he might have.
No, that it is a Zemeckis film. It is a Zemeckis film. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. Last Samurai. Someone Google that for us. Do the research. But yeah, it was amazing. That film kicked off basically an entire industry really in New Zealand.
Yeah, and it's. I still really like it. I still really like watching Bad Taste. I hadn't seen it in years, and I think the last time I saw it was before The Lord of the Rings came out. Yeah. So like I hadn't seen it since The Lord of the Rings, and it's very fascinating to see how Peter Jackson has evolved as a filmmaker. But didn't Australia ban Bad Taste?
Yeah,
for a while.
They did, and there was. It was funny. So I think it was Aussie. There was the history of Australian cinema. If you ever get a chance, YouTube or Google it and watch it. It's some fascinating little docos about how Aussie cinema was some of the most sort of violent Mad Max. Even like it made Mad Max look like a kids movie. Some of the stuff they were producing, and they went through this period of sort of banning stuff. And yeah, it's such a, and you wouldn't know it now. Aussie cinema is very. It's pretty. It's up there, but it's sort of quite tame and. Well,
Bad Taste, the gore level in that movie was just so over the top, and it actually led to the disbanding of the Australian film commission because they had actually approved the movie before it got released, and then afterwards they kind of went back on their word and banned it, and then people just got fed up with them and said, let's get rid of this thing.
So there you go. Someone's Googled it for us. Thank you very much, Phoenix Night Flame. The Last Samurai, obviously the Tom Cruise one, is by Edward Zwick. So
that's it.
Totally
the guy who did Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Yeah, that's right. So you can come here for all your trusted movie news and facts. Now, I'll tell you what, I've been watching a couple of things. I've watched, I'm just going to bring it up on my phone so I can see it and remember, where are we? I'll Be Gone in the Dark. That new, it's an HBO doco series. It's about what was his name?
Is that the Golden State Killer one?
The rapist. And he killed 10 people, but he raped I think it was over 50 or 60 women. And it was horrific. He'd come into people's homes, even with the husband there, and this guy was a psycho. And he remained at large until Patton Oswalt's late wife.
Yeah, the Golden State Killer.
Yeah, Golden State Killer, yeah. And so she, they had another name for him, the East Side something, I can't remember exact details, but it's 2 episodes in, they're broadcasting week to week, and I've just finished the second episode last night. Fascinating. She's a writer, and so it's a bit about her process, but she got fascinated with crime writing, and then she decided to pursue this guy all these years later, and I don't know the full story, but what I understand is that led to his arrest and
yeah, so basically she died very unexpectedly
That's right.
before she could finish her book.
Yeah.
But her investigation into this helped lead to the eventual capture of the actual killer. I'm kind of waiting for the entire series to come out so I can binge it.
Yeah.
But
Do that. I'm finding it hard to wait a week between episodes.
Yeah. I kind of did the same thing with this other HBO documentary called McMillions, which was about the monopoly fraud that
That's
went on
right.
with the McDonald's game, which was an interesting little series. I've been watching Perry Mason too.
Oh yeah, you enjoying
Perry
that?
Mason on HBO. Yeah, I am. Like my mom was a big fan of the original Perry Mason.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up watching that.
Yeah.
But this new one, it's a very different take on the character. But I'm digging it.
Yeah, see, that's I haven't started that yet. It's on my. We've got a. You don't have it overseas, but we've got this thing here. Let me see if I can show you, called Neon, and or the green screen doing its best to phase it all out. Neon TV is owned by one of our sort of local satellite television companies, and they've got some good stuff on there. They have the HBO stuff, but so I haven't started that yet. So, but if you get a chance, I'll be gone in the dark. And maybe do what Matthew's doing, wait for it to binge watch. I'm struggling to wait because it's quite well produced. I was a bit worried.
It looks good.
It does. And the thing that worried me was Patton Oswalt, some of his political outbursts can be quite in your face. And I thought, I wonder if it's going to be sort of loaded in that way. It's Matthew's just dropped off again. Hopefully he's going to be back in a second as I talk about this. Oh, he's back. Sorry about that, mate. One thing I was worried about was Patton Oswalt. His politics and political outbursts can be quite sort of intense and in your face. But he, and he's in it. But it's not like that at all. It's a really good doco that just sort of tells her story and the story of this killer and tracking him down, and it's absolutely fascinating. The other thing I've been watching is called White House Farm. It's a 6-part British series based on a true crime story that happened in 1985 about the killing of 3 generations of one family all in one night in a farmhouse in England, and about who was and who wasn't guilty. It's got several actors from Game of Thrones in it. Who's the character who was the real? They castrated him, and he was this. Theon. I couldn't remember his name. Theon. The guy who plays Theon is in this. He's got a bit part. He plays a
Alfie Allen, right?
Alfie Allen. He plays a New Zealander. Tries to anyway. Do the really bad New Zealand accent like mine. It's weird. The best New Zealand accent was by Anthony Hopkins in The World's Fastest Indian. If you haven't seen it, true story about a guy who went to the salt flats in Utah and raced his own homemade bike that he built in the South Island here in New Zealand. And but Anthony Hopkins got the accent right. This guy doesn't. But it's a great. It's only 6 parts. If you can watch it online somewhere, it's really well made, and it was so gripping. Don't look up anything about the case before you watch it if you don't already know. But yeah, that was. Gee, that's been good.
Speaking of gripping British television. Me and my girlfriend have been watching The Great British Bake Off on Netflix.
My wife loves that, mate.
It's fantastic. I love that show. It's such a feel-good show, and it's just you get really super into like all the contestants and stuff. And I love to cook, so I got really into it.
Oh, classic. Welcome along those who've joined us since we started. We are about to start talking about Star Wars. You haven't missed that. We just got sidetracked into all sorts of tangents. So Jason Walsh has asked, wasn't Searching for Bobby Fischer directed by Stephen Gallahan? Galligan? No. Says no. That's a no.
Edward Zwick.
Edward
Zwick.
Yeah, I thought so
too. He wrote and directed that one.
Yep. If you don't believe us, Google it. And if we're wrong, obviously Google is wrong.
Yeah, if we're wrong, let us know.
Yeah. Please let us know.
I don't think I'm wrong because I really liked Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was one of his big
I
ones.
think I'm right. Yeah.
Tell me, someone Chubby Teddy Monster says Productions says I don't want to know what you produce with a name like that. Chubby says, oh man, Brendan, you've got to pull out and dust off the Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. What an album! I actually just bought a brand new Iron Maiden album recently. It's Brave New World, which came out around the year 2000 on double LP. My kids love it. They absolutely love it. My daughters are big Iron Maiden fans. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Iron Maiden. Matthew, Star Wars. What the heck are they going to do now? Now, someone has asked us a question to start off with. They've said, Stick One says, have you heard the rumour that the Disney trilogy will be erased by using some sort of forced time portal. So that might be a good place to start. I haven't heard that rumour, but what the heck are they going to do now? Because it seems to me that apart from The Mandalorian, Disney Star Wars films are in real trouble. Am I right or am I wrong?
I guess it depends on how you define trouble. So obviously, they finished the new trilogy and they're kind of in a holding pattern over like where they want to go next with the movie version, because it seems Disney's shifted its entire focus to the streaming app.
Yeah.
Because that's like the future of the studio.
Yeah.
So they're amping up their offerings for that. You got all the Marvel TV series in production. You got Mandalorian season 2. You've got like I think 2 other Star Wars based TV shows. I have heard the rumor that Disney's like planning to decanonize the sequel trilogy and try to retcon it in some way. I don't buy that for like
how could you? I don't know. How could you do that though? I don't know how you could do that.
I think if they were going to do something like that, what they would probably do is just ignore those movies and just go forward with new stories or focus on stuff that happens in between Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi, kind of like what The Mandalorian's doing.
Because that was the Marvel approach, right? That there's these Marvel character films that exist prior to the MCU, and they just sort of do their own thing from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always been this kind of subset of Star Wars fans who are disappointed in how Disney's handled things, and they always start these crazy rumors that end up just being false, but by the time they're proven false, everyone forgets about it. I've been on the forefront of saying Kathleen Kennedy is not going to be fired for going on, like, I don't know, 3-4 years now. Yeah. Everyone always keeps telling me I'm crazy. There's no way that I'm not going to fire her. I'm like, you don't understand Hollywood contract law.
Yeah.
Well,
I think also even just if you understood how organizations like this work, and if you've ever worked in a big organization with a boss that's not so good, they actually have to do something pretty serious or leave of their own volition. They get embedded in a culture without any accountability is normally what happens.
Yeah, I've always said that Kathleen Kennedy will leave her position at Lucasfilm when she wants to retire.
Yeah.
But she's making too much money, she's wielding too much influence, and she's got too many friends on the Disney board that give her protection. And like, there's no reason for her to step down at this point, and there's no valid reason to fire her. A lot of people always say like, oh, the Star Wars movies have lost money and stuff like that. And it's like, no. Yeah. Even Solo ended up being profitable in the long run.
Yeah.
But going forward, it's going to be interesting to see, because I know that it's been kind of a wild ride since they announced, Rian Johnson's getting a trilogy, and then it was the Benioff and Weiss are going to be producing the new Star Wars movies, and then it was like Kevin Feige is going to be producing a Star Wars movie, and now it's Taika Waititi is going to be directing and writing a Star Wars movie, and it's almost like they just keep redoing who they want to be Star Wars.
Let's talk about Taika Waititi. Do you think, because I think that was probably the smartest move they've made in ages, but do you think his movie will get stuck in development hell? Will he ever get it made? Like, because there's been some big announcements like that have gone nowhere.
Well, the difference here is that Taika is one of the kind of new stars of the Disney stable. Like, he did really well with Thor Ragnarok. He's got a great track record. He just won an Oscar, so he's got a lot of clout right now. So getting him to agree to do a Star Wars movie was a big coup for Disney. And I think that he wants to do a Star Wars movie, and he directed the season finale of the first season of Mandalorian.
That's right. And he was in it.
Yeah, and so like basically, he was the voice of IG-88 or IG-87, whatever that robot's name is. But he's got the clout to make the type of movie he wants to make, and they want him to make it. And so I think that if Kevin Feige ends up producing his movie, and so it's a Feige Waititi film, much like Thor Ragnarok was, I think that we'll probably get a pretty good like Star Wars film out of it, because I think I've never seen a movie of Taika's that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Some people don't respond to a sense of humor, but it's kind of like we were just talking about bad taste. It's that Kiwi sense of humor, where it's very kind of low key.
Yeah.
But he's also a very sophisticated filmmaker. Like the themes in his movies and stuff like that are all like really good. His character work is really good. I know a lot of people are kind of worried about Thor: Love and Thunder, about it being a little bit too woke because it's got like the Jane Foster Thor angle potentially in it. And Waititi has famously trolled some people on Twitter who weren't happy with his announcement.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's just his sense of humor. That's not really him being like a mean-spirited egomaniac like Ryan Johnson is.
No, he's a good filmmaker. He definitely makes to type. He's an auteur. And if you watch, so people who had never seen him before and who saw Thor Ragnarok, they were like, wow, this is amazing and it's funny, and it did reignite what was going on with Thor. But if you go back and watch his back catalogue, you realise that's his particular style. The humour and the way those characters are, it's very consistent, whether he's doing some of his New Zealand comedy work. Flight of the Conchords, by the way, for those who don't know, he very, very involved in the creation of Flight of the Conchords, even though he doesn't appear in it.
What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, exactly. So this guy, he has a particular... And so I would say we'll see a Star Wars film which will have, I think, probably what Star Wars has been missing, which is that sort of enjoyable entertainment-based outing,
And they haven't cancelled the Johnson trilogy yet.
Yeah, what the heck is going on there? Is that still on, is it?
I believe it is. They came out right before The Last Jedi premiered and said that they had given him a 3-picture deal to develop and direct and write his own Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah.
And so since then, we haven't heard anything about it, and a lot of people have speculated that it's been canceled.
Yeah.
But the way that I know Hollywood works is that they'll announce these things, and the development process can take years. And he had other movies kind of on his slate after The Last Jedi came out, and like Knives Out was one of them, for instance.
Yeah.
So my guess is that as soon as he kind of clears his plate, he's going to start work on those movies, in earnest. Now, whether or not in 5 more years Disney still wants to go forward with this trilogy, that's another question altogether. But in my opinion, it's probably still on. He's probably still getting paid to, develop a Star Wars trilogy. Whether or not it's actually going to be produced in the long run, that's another question.
What did you think of Knives Out, by the way?
I thought it was all right. Like, I'm a big fan of cozy mysteries. I like the Agatha Christie style, and I really liked the character of Benoit Blanc, who is played by Daniel Craig in the movie. It was filled with these like subversive political messages that Ryan Johnson just layered into The Last Jedi that I didn't necessarily agree with, and they were kind of like not subtle at all.
No.
And the mystery itself wasn't very good. Like, they kind of reveal what happened within like the first half hour of the movie, and then it's very obvious to guess who the real culprit is. So like overall, like it wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, but it wasn't a very good. It was just a very middle of the road movie for me.
My wife is a big fan of Agatha Christie, both reading the books and also she loves Hercule Poirot, the character of Poirot. She says to me there's only one Poirot, and it's David Suchet.
Yes.
She's an absolute insistent on that. But so we watched it together because this is her sort of style, and you could see that he really was. It is a bit of a rip-off of Poirot in the sense of that character, what he's trying to do with it.
It was like a mix.
Yeah.
It was a mixture of different like sleuths, I think. And did she see the Murder on the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh?
She didn't.
And
she
the
didn't like that
mustache?
as much. Yeah, she didn't like that one as much.
The best part of that movie is his mustache. That thing's just epic.
Kenneth Branagh is a great actor. If you've seen him in anything Shakespearean, phenomenal. A lot
great
of
actor, terrible movie director.
Yes, and that film though, gosh, he's not Mel Gibson. You can't put him behind a camera and in front of it at the same time. It just
I just watched his Artemis Fowl movie on Disney+.
What do you think? My kids watched it the other day.
Not good. I mean, like as a standalone family movie, it's passable, but as an adaptation of the book, it was pretty insulting. Like they Percy Jacksoned it pretty much.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of Branagh's directing.
Yeah.
But he is a fantastic actor.
Oh, phenomenal actor. And as I said, that Shakespearean background, it's really he's in league with what's his name, Patrick Stewart. Like that's the sort of
classically trained British actor.
They have that same. Patrick's gone off the rails a little bit lately, but Kenneth Branagh, I suspect with Branagh what we might see is a little bit more of the, as he ages, we might see a bit more independent, quality acting, like Hopkins, maybe, that sort of they develop a pedigree in their older.
Well, he's isn't Branagh in the Tenet movie?
Yeah, he is. Are you right? That's a Nolan. I was going to say this because so before we move on to go back to Star Wars, Knives Out. I'm with you. I think it's okay. It's just as I'd like to see more of that character, but better developed and better stories in the hands of someone else, maybe. Because I actually thought that Daniel Craig was chewing the scenery.
He really was having fun with that character, and they are making a sequel to it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was funny watching that movie because everyone was like, "Oh, it's." Because of The Last Jedi, it's going to flop. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, They made the movie's money back before it ever premiered. They basically sold the foreign rights to the film based off the cast alone.
Yeah.
The movie was made for like $30 million, and they made something like 30 to 40 million off of the pre-sale. So it had already broken even by the time it hit theaters. So every piece of revenue that it makes from that point out was pure profit. And
that's understandable too, because it's a completely different audience. It's a completely different audience. This is older, probably predominantly females, but it's older people who are not diehard Star Wars fans who are going to watch that film. Yeah, they love mysteries, right?
Yeah, and Hollywood, they don't really care about the quality of your movie because that can be so subjective. They care about the bottom line, which is, did it make money?
Yeah.
And whether you like Rian Johnson or not, his movies, I don't think he's had a bomb. Like, his movies have all made money, even The Last Jedi.
I know, and that's it's scary. The rewarding of stuff that's not so good. Let's bring it back here then. Before we get back into this topic of how do we save Star Wars, I haven't heard your thoughts. Well, I haven't talked to you since the Rise of Skywalker. What was your hot take on that?
It was a mess. Back in May, me and my Salty Nerd podcast crew members, we rewatched all the Star Wars movies from the prequels to the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And we had a big talk about The Force Awakens, about The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And Rise of Skywalker, it was such a difficult position for that movie to be in, because basically The Last Jedi, one of the biggest problems with The Last Jedi is that it closed a lot of the storylines that The Force Awakens set up.
Yeah.
And so the Rise of Skywalker not only had to figure out how to continue those storylines, but they also had to figure out how to fix a lot of the plot holes that The Last Jedi created within the saga.
Yeah.
And they didn't do a good job at any of that stuff. And in fact, they ended up pissing off not just the fans of The Last Jedi, but also the detractors of the Disney trilogy to begin with.
Yeah.
And when I saw it in the theaters, I knew it was stupid.
Yeah.
I knew that this movie was a mess, that it was kind of, reshot to hell, and the whole bringing Palpatine back and stuff was just stupid, and the ending with Rey Skywalker, the identity theft ending, everything about this movie was just dumb.
Yeah.
But I'm such a Star Wars fan that I was willing to forgive it a lot of its dumbness.
Yeah.
Just because I learned a long time ago to stop worrying and love the bomb, So I just kind of, I could spend weeks talking about everything that's wrong with this movie.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just it's done. We got to move on and hopefully encourage Lucasfilm to hire people who can construct a long-form storytelling, because the biggest problem with the Disney trilogy was that there was never a plan for it. J.J. Abrams did not write an outline for the next two movies. Rian Johnson had to write his movie while J.J. was shooting his. He didn't know, he had to look at the dailies to know what J.J. had planned for that movie, because he had no idea, what the plot elements were. He didn't know where the characters were going to end up. And Colin Trevorrow had it even worse, because he was trying to write the third installment, and he had no idea what Johnson was doing. And then the stuff that he wanted to do, they were like, you can't do that because Ryan wants to do it this way. So
look, here's what I think happened. You've got the fuse was lit, if you like, on the moment that J.J. Abrams just rebooted A New Hope effectively, with what he did. I think that was it. They were in real trouble at that point, because how do you then separate? I mean, possibly they could have separated into a different trajectory from there, but they were handed so many problems at the end of that film that I think they were in trouble from that point onwards.
Well, originally that they were working with a writer who wanted to take 12 months to plan out the entire trilogy. Like he wanted to write 3 scripts, and he wanted to make sure that they were all kind of, coherent and kind of work together as a third installment. Yeah. And Disney was like, 12 months? No, we need to get this out in like 3 months. So like they brought in J.J. Abrams, and J.J. just kind of said like, well, let's just give people more of what they liked. And so like, we're just going to redo A New Hope. And he then pieced out afterwards. He was like, okay, you guys can handle it. and I think Iger really had to put the pliers to his fingernails to get him to come back. He's like, look, you started this mess. You got to finish it if you ever want to work in this town again.
What it was, honestly, that's a great way of describing it. I'm out, dudes. See you later.
Yeah,
like, what a mess. I'm blowing this pot. This movie sucks. Yeah, it was. But here's the thing. I remember I was around and an adult for the prequel trilogy and the mess that was. But even we came out of the prequel trilogy, and the final film we're like, you know what, the trilogy is a mess. But that last film was the most enjoyable outing of the 3. And we got something for our money at the end of it. It wasn't much, but we got something there, and even if it was just a bit of a darker moment or two. But this one, oh my gosh, you got to the end of this trilogy and it was like, yeah, who cares? It's the most bizarre thing ever. It wasn't even like anger. It wasn't even apathy. It was just like ambivalence and who cares?
Yeah, like a lot of people who were like longtime Star Wars fans, to them, the saga is dead. They have buried it and moved on with their fandom. To me, like, I still enjoy Star Wars. To me, it was always episodes 4 through 6. That's what Star Wars is to me. Yeah. And I enjoyed The Mandalorian. I'm going to keep watching Star Wars. I will criticize it where it deserves to be criticized, and I will praise it when it deserves to be praised. And I just hope that Jon Favreau is able to kind of wield enough influence in the Lucasfilm domain so that Kathleen.
Oh, and he's dropped off again. Hang in there, folks. He'll be back soon. Oh, and you're back, Matthew. Oh, no, we're trying to ring Matthew. This is gold, live TV. And you're back. Sorry about that, mate. You were just saying Jon Favreau. You hope that Jon Favreau has enough influence?
Yeah, I hope he has enough influence in Lucasfilm to kind of keep Kathleen Kennedy from continuing to hire the wrong people to drive this franchise into the ground. Because if Kathleen Kennedy has proven anything, it's that she's a terrible creative producer. Yeah. Like, she might have been a good line producer or logistical producer when she was working for Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and making sure that they had everything they needed to make the movies that they wanted to make. But when it comes to her being a creative head, someone who makes creative decisions about long-term stuff and hiring decisions and things of those natures, she's proven time and time again that she's in over her head when it comes to Star Wars. And I just think that she's the wrong person to be leading Lucasfilm at this point.
It's interesting you should mention The Mandalorian, because I've went back recently and we've been watching sort of on a Sunday afternoon or evening 1 episode a week of The Mandalorian with my kids. So series 1. And even my youngest, my 4-year-old, she's about to turn 5, they all love it. Now, I had some critical things to say about it when it first came out. And here's the funny thing. I think this is how the films jaundice your view of everything. Because after like the Rise of Skywalker and everything else, you just so... And The Last Jedi, you feel the corruption of that, the Disney story. The Star Wars story by Disney. And so you watch Mandalorian through that lens. And I think I look back now and I think I was probably a little bit overly critical. There's still some things that I would critique about the show, but going back and watching it a second time now with my kids, and particularly seeing the joy they get out of it and realising, actually, when you've got the ability to watch it perhaps a little bit more compressed, they were doing it week to week, and that drew some things out a little bit. It's an enjoyable piece of storytelling, even outside of the Star Wars universe. I think it's an enjoyable piece of storytelling.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I mean, there were a few episodes where they had some missteps, but overall, like it was a good Star Wars story.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they develop it. Season 2 will be telling, where it ends up. Hopefully, it gets made. Now,
Well, it's already been done shot. I think they're just finishing up.
oh,
The
so
special
they
effects.
shot before the COVID
Before
came
the
along.
lockdown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So here's the thing I think Star Wars is struggling with now is you've got an absolute demolition of what was a phenomenal piece of mythology and storytelling that was done by Disney. They just completely blew the thing to bits. Completely oversaturated by sort of woke politics talking points as well, which doesn't help. But now I think we're moving into a sort of societal phase now where I've talked a lot about authentic mythology and how it's really important to, that's what you resonates with you in a good story. You're able to say, hey, I recognise that hero, even if it's someone completely different background to me, because those universal truths about the human experience and struggle and everything else, I recognise in my own life. I've got my struggles and I've got this and I've got that. You connect with it in a way that as it goes beyond what you're actually watching. And so Star Wars was a great example of that. But I think now in our society, the whole postmodernist, cultural Marxist deconstruction of narrative, like Disney's now got to try and resurrect something in the midst of that cultural mess that's going on at the same time and all the woke politics. And I wonder if we're going to have a big hiatus before, I don't know, 10 years' time, something comes out of the fire. You know what I mean?
I think after November you'll see kind of a reversion.
Yeah, that's true.
All this stuff is just a lead up to the U.S. elections in November. They're trying their best to, shame people from voting a way that they don't want them to vote and stuff like that. But once the election's over, one way or another, you're probably going to see this, what you were talking about, kind of like come back a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
I hope so.
I hope so,
because I see an ascendancy with that particular ideology that's rather worrying. But definitely, you can see the political machinations of. But it's spread out even to places now like New Zealand. We've got these sort of ideas flying around. This is why one thing I've been saying for a while, I think Disney, they would do themselves no end of favours if they went and said to Christopher Nolan, how much do we have to pay you to make, write, produce, direct, your total creative control of your own trilogy, Star Wars trilogy? I mean,
no one would probably turn him down.
I know he would. I know.
I don't think he'd want anything to do with that.
And can you blame him? But man, wouldn't that be phenomenal? That would be. I think that would be phenomenal.
You know what though? Like, I don't really think Nolan has the right sensibility to do a Star Wars movie. I think Taika Waititi is a much better kind of choice for something like that.
Yeah.
Because with Star Wars, you can't be too bleak. Like there has to always be this kind of message of hope.
Yeah.
To make them work, and a little bit of whimsy. I feel like Nolan's just a very serious filmmaker. He doesn't have a lot of humor to his movies, and you kind of need that good mix of the dramatic and the comedic with Star Wars in order to make it work. In my opinion.
I think you're right. That's a valid point. Possibly why I love him so much. But I think you're right. That is a fair point. But the adult Star Wars fan in me says I'd still love to see that trilogy, which I don't know. But you're right. Some men just want to watch the world burn. It's probably not going to work in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Tell me. Let's talk about the Oscars now. The Oscars are talking about introducing a diversity quota for like before you're even allowed to be in the Oscar contention. Now, apparently this year's films, it won't count. They haven't announced, I believe, let me just bring up this article here and see if I can read it. They haven't announced what they're going to do, but what their requirements will be. There's been some rumours, but apparently the British Film Institute did this last year, and here's what they have. All entries in 2 British film categories, Outstanding British Film and Outstanding Debut Film by a British writer, director or producer, are now required to increase representation to meet at least 2 of 4 diversity standards like quote-unquote on-screen representation, themes and narratives, and industry access and opportunity needs. So I've heard rumours that they're talking about unless like a certain percentage of your film crew of the right ethnicity or a certain percentage of on-screen. I can't see how this is going to be anything good for the Oscars, surely.
Well, I mean, it moves it out of the realm of like, you know, awards based off of merit,
Yeah.
and adds a factor of affirmative action to it.
Yeah.
And like, could you ever trust that, like, let's say an African American did win, an Oscar based off of like the inclusion standard? Can you ever trust that guy actually deserved that award, because it's not a level playing field? And like, I understand the Oscars have come under fire as being like Oscars so white and like all that stuff. And I mean, it's such a silly thing too, because it's Hollywood awarding itself. I always has been, and nobody really cares. The Oscars are really only good for helping people within the industry increase their asking price, because they can say like, I'm an award-winning so-and-so.
Yeah. And then the next 10 awful movies they produce, they get to stick on the back of the DVD cover, produced by or directed by or starring Oscar or nominated.
Yeah, like even if you're just nominated for the Oscars, you get like a big kind of boost. Like it's kind of funny. Like for the longest time, like Ben Affleck, he got nominated for writing Good Will Hunting. And that's right. In all the movies he acted in, it was like Oscar nominee Ben Affleck, and it's like, yeah, not for acting. He got nominated for writing, and I think he won an award for director for Argo.
That's right.
But he's never won an award for acting.
No.
But in every movie that he acts in, it's like Oscar winner Ben Affleck.
Mate, you gotta show what you got, bro.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't blame him, but nobody cares about the Oscars who actually watches movies. It's only the people who are involved in making movies that care about the Oscars. Yeah. And I just feel like if I were a person of color and they were mandating that these inclusions be in the awards, I'd wonder like whether or not that was really something that I'd want to be associated with, because it's basically like you're telling everyone that people of color can't win awards on their own. They have to be helped in order to do it. Yeah. And that's obviously not the case, because we've had lots of examples of people of color winning Oscars and stuff like that in the past. So it just so happens that a lot of the movies that are made with majority white, like cast or stuff like that. So the real question becomes, why doesn't Hollywood, instead of mandating an award show include a certain number of actors, why doesn't Hollywood produce more films geared towards black people or Hispanic people or Asian people?
Well, it's a funny thing though, eh? I think it also assumes that if you are a white person, there's a particular type of film that you will watch and you won't watch anything else. If you're a black person, you watch these films but not those films. It's to me, it treats everyone in the wrong way. It's that identity politics. Let's treat everyone as one homogenous group and assume that they're only going to like certain types of things. And ironically, it's actually kind of racist, really. You're profiling people in a way that is very stereotyped. I think my thinking is, because I thought about this, I thought, well, would that mean that you could never make, let's say you wanted to make a film, and I think historical epics could be in real trouble, because if you're going to make historical films about, say, events that pertain to only Europeans, you're either going to have to alter history to meet the Oscar standard, or that you're never going to get considered. And vice versa. I'm assuming it doesn't go the other way, though. So if you wanted to make an all-black film about a black issue with no white characters or actors or historical figures, then maybe you'd be okay. I don't know. But I'm assuming if it's equal opportunity, then it would go that way too. To me, I think the better option is, if you want to address these issues, then surely put funding into film school scholarships and things like that in some of these poorer neighbourhoods, so there's a pathway for them to actually come into the industry and to really show what they've got.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like the biggest issue here is just that there's a lot of minorities in the entertainment business that aren't given work, because like there just aren't enough roles for them. Yeah. And it's gotten to the point where a lot of stuff that just to be authentic would need to cast like white people, for instance, like a French medieval setting, and now they're basically casting minorities in these parts, which goes against the historical accuracy of it, just because they want to have that racial quota
Yeah.
for their movies. And I feel like you're right. Like I can watch a movie like Bad Boys for Life that stars like two big African American actors, and I can like that movie. I can enjoy it even though I don't identify with them because I'm a middle-aged white guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like black people can do the same thing where like they can watch a movie with a white protagonist and still identify with him even though he doesn't have the same color of skin. And that's really something that we should probably try cultivating.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, you can't play a trans character if you're not trans yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happened to Halle Berry, right? Just this last week.
It happened to Scarlett Johansson a while back too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And to me, I look at that and I go, well, what's the point of having actors then? Are we just going to get into a situation where you've got a trans person who can't act, just being trans on film? Like, is that what this is going to come to?
But I mean, like, look at what happened with the CW Batwoman thing, where you have to cast a real lesbian in the role because the character is lesbian. You can't have a straight woman playing a gay woman in this TV show, and it's just like, whatever happened to the concept of acting? Which is you pretend to be something you're not.
Well, and it's the irony too is the amount of thespians who are actually gay who play straight people all the time. I think we should be asking for our money back. Like this doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
No. I mean, like it comes down to what's more important, the entertainment or the message.
Yeah.
And I think that lately Hollywood has been placing more importance on political messaging than it has on actually entertaining people.
Yeah. And
I mean, you look at some of these big franchises that have been ruined by political messaging, like Terminator Dark Fate, for instance.
Yeah.
That killed the Terminator franchise effectively because, they got, they put more importance on casting women and trying to exalt women over men and pissing off their fan base than they did about wanting to make like just a good Terminator movie.
Yeah.
And, I watched Dark Fate. I thought it was okay. It was probably one of the better.
Oh, and he's disappeared again. There seems to be an internet issue at his end, folks, so just hang in there. We need one of those screen broken little things. And you're back, Matthew. Sorry, you were just saying?
Sorry, I'm in Las Vegas. You're in New Zealand. This is a long distance phone call.
Yeah, everyone's at home and they're on their internet today because of that lockdown.
Yeah. So like I was just saying, I saw Terminator Dark Fate. I thought it was an okay sequel to Terminator 2. But when the director of a movie comes out and says straight white men are going to be scared shitless of this movie, and straight white men happen to be your core fan base, it's probably not the best idea, So.
Look, here's the thing, though. That it's so disgraceful because then they churn out this pulpy garbage full of political messaging, and then they go and take it to China, and China says, "Oh, no, that person's the wrong color. Okay, let's just wipe them out of the film." Then it's like, you hypocrites! Like it is pure. It's such a weird thing. It's you can see it's pure financial self-preservation. Really, it's not even principled.
Yeah, the whole tactic of attacking your audience for not liking your movie has always boggled my mind. It started with Ghostbusters 2016.
That's right.
And has just gotten worse and worse. And I'm like, Hollywood, what are you thinking? Like, you don't attack your consumer if you want to continue selling products to them.
Yeah.
The whole state of Hollywood right now is just so weird, and because of the COVID thing, it's in a state of flux where productions have been paused for months, and so like there's going to be a big dearth of new content coming out next year. It's just weird, man.
Let's talk about that, because what's going to happen? Like I saw an article just yesterday. Apparently, Christopher Nolan is really, I think, with Tenet, he's looking to try and sort of give people something to go back to the cinema for. He loves cinema, right? And good on him. What happens? I mean, it's potentially that cinemas around the world are going to die, either because there's no one who can go there because of lockdown restrictions, or because there's no content for them to show.
Yeah, I don't know about them dying. I'm sure that they'll probably get a bailout or something.
Yeah.
the whole AMC theater thing, they're owned by like some like Chinese company. So like they got the whole government of China to bail them out if they need to. But I just think that if there weren't mask restrictions, people wouldn't be afraid to go to a theater and have like the buffer seat between between them and stuff. So it's just so weird right now, and it's kind of funny because for decades the theater chains have prevented the studios from doing same day release to home video as theater releases.
Oh, and he's disappeared again. Must be some busy traffic there in Las Vegas. What's the time there? 2:30. Everyone must be jumping online. Mate, the joys of live TV. Here you go, Matthew. You're back.
Yeah. Really sorry about that. I don't know why
right, mate.
This keeps happening. I've got pretty good internet here, but
look, you're in Las Vegas. Everyone's must be on the slot machines. What? It must be almost 3 o'clock or something there, is it?
Almost 4 actually.
Sorry. What were you saying though before you were rudely interrupted?
Yeah, I kind of forget what my train of thought was.
Movie. Actually, speaking of movie theaters, I'm going to take you off screen briefly, and I'm going to disappear. See in the background here, folks, you can see this. This is my green screen. This is actually a photograph of a local small cinema here in Christchurch, just down the road. And what it is Google it if you want to. You're back now, Matthew. It's a place called Alice's, and Alice in Videoland they used to be called, and they were like the premier video store. You'd go there, and you would find films. They're still one of the few video rental places running. You'd find films that you couldn't find anywhere else. These are art house films and stuff you'd be able to rent. Now, they set up their own little theatre. That's what's in the background there. And they show and display those sort of films. And I suspect that sort of niche stuff like that will probably still survive. But I don't know about the big chains.
Well, I remember what I was saying, which was that the theater chains have been kind of preventing studios from doing the direct-to-home video release for like a long time, by threatening not to allow their movies to be released in their theaters. So like if AMC or Regal tells you, oh, we're not going to carry your movie, you're missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars. So the movie studios were kind of beholden to the theater chains. But with COVID, you've seen some studios decide to release direct-to-home video through like Amazon Prime and Netflix and stuff like that. And so like that threat has been neutralized for the time being, and now studios are able to actually get data on how well a direct-to-home video release is going to do of a new movie. Yeah. And now that they have that data, they're going to be able to weigh whether or not it's worth it to go to the theater, or if it's if they're able to make just as much money, if not more, by going direct-to-home video streaming, stuff like that. And we've already seen like Universal Studios just got blacklisted by AMC and Regal. So they're refusing to carry stuff like the Fast and Furious movies and Jurassic World and things of that nature. And we're going to see how that plays out. But a lot of these studios are now able to determine whether or not it's a viable strategy to go to video on demand for release. Yeah. And and I think it's interesting from a consumer point of view too, because I would have never seen The Invisible Man in theaters. Yeah. But because it was available on Amazon, I was like, well, let's watch it tonight while we're at home.
We started earlier on talking about Peter Jackson, or Sir Peter Jackson. He's been knighted here in New Zealand, actually. And the funny thing about that is Peter Jackson, about a year ago or 2 years ago, he was working on a business model where they would actually offer brand new cinema releases streamed, but you would pay. So say, for New Zealand, for example, if you want to watch a new release, home theatre film, you might rent it on iTunes for $7.99 New Zealand dollars. You'd pay $50, for example, for a cinema release. And the whole idea was, he said, there's a lot more people now who've got the home theatre setups. They don't want to go to movie theatres. They'd get a group of friends together, maybe split the cost, and they'd pay $50 to stream, a particular film, a new release movie. And I think Matthew's disappeared again. Just as I was in mid-thought, my most intelligent thought. Are you back, Matthew? Yeah. I was just saying, and Peter Jackson said, look, people have got home theatre setups. They will pay $50 with a group of friends, maybe split the cost between them, and watch a new release movie, like a brand new cinema release that way. I noticed it just popped up on my phone the other day. we've got Apple TV Plus, what they call Apple. Yeah, I can't remember. So we've got, because we had to buy a new Apple TV unit, and so we got it free for a year with that. And I noticed Greyhound, that new Tom Hanks film, is arriving today on Apple TV free. I was quite surprised by that.
Yeah, I mean, that was supposed to be a theatrical release.
That's right.
Apple decided, oh, we're going to make an Apple original exclusive, and Tom Hanks wasn't too happy about that.
That usual Tom Hanks moolah, I'd imagine he won't be.
Yeah, and I think the Academy this year is actually waiving the requirement that the film be shown in theaters.
Yeah.
So direct to streaming stuff is probably going to have like a bigger impact in this year's Oscars.
Yeah.
So.
One last thing to finish with, folks. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in. If you've got questions or comments you want to chuck in there, particularly questions, maybe you want to ask Matthew something or get us to chew over the fat about it before we wrap this up, then please chuck them in the comment section now. Matthew, I saw you tweeted the other day about this. One of my favourite films of all time, or certainly one of my favourite graphic novel films of all time, and that's Constantine. And apparently they're looking at making a sequel now with Keanu Reeves coming back. Is that right?
Yeah, he's getting this big resurgence. So he's coming back for the new Matrix movies. He's coming back for the new Bill and Ted movie, and now they're trying to get him to come back for a new Constantine movie. And it looks like they're pretty serious about it. And Keanu, like he seems game. And I think Constantine was one of those underrated comic book films before Marvel kind of took over,
That's right.
the industry and stuff. And the real question I have is will Shia LaBeouf reprise his role in this movie?
That was gold. It was before he went mad.
Yeah, before he went crazy.
He was great in that film. He
He's a really
the
good
perfect
actor.
Yeah, and he was the perfect eccentric sort of sidekick. You know, it worked so well. Look, there was everything. Tilda Swinton, gosh, as the angel, she was Gabriel, and it wasn't she. That was great.
Peter Stormare as Lucifer.
That's right, and he was, gosh, he chewed the scenery. That was.
And, what's her name? The woman in it. Rachel Weisz.
Yeah, Rachel Weisz. Yeah, she's.
Oh my God, she's gorgeous. Like she hasn't aged. Like I don't know what kind of deal with the devil she made. She looks better.
There's a painting of her somewhere that's aging. It's her. Who is it? There's someone else. There's another male actor who's like that, and they never seem to age.
Paul Rudd.
Paul. He's getting younger. He's becoming a child. I'm excited. Is there any word on writers and directors and stuff, or is it going to be part of the MCU, or what are they talking about? Do you know?
Well, it's a DC character.
Sorry. Is it going to be part of that DC attempt to reboot the universe?
Like the original, like if it's a sequel to the original, the question is, are they going to kind of fold the original into what they're currently doing, or keep it separate? Things are weird at DC right now. Like it doesn't feel like anybody knows what's actually going on. Like, there's all this talk about getting Ben Affleck to come back as his version of Batman.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams is over there, and he's going to be in charge of the new Superman movie, as well as possibly Green Lantern. So I don't know what type of influence he's wielding over there. There's no Kevin Feige over at DC. Like there's no one who's kind of overseeing everything. It used to be Jeff Johns, but he went out. Ray Park just came out and bashed Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns, saying that they created a bad working environment on the Justice League movies.
Oh, wow.
Like it was a very public thing that you don't usually see from like an actor like that. The whole like Flash movie is still up in the air. Like we don't know what's going on with that. We know that there's like the potential to have 3 different Batmans in that movie: the Michael Keaton Batman, the kind of Flashpoint.
Oh, and he's disappeared again. Maybe DC's doesn't like us talking badly about them. 3, 2, 1, and boom. And you're back. You're back, Matthew. Sorry, you were saying Michael
the
Keaton.
Flashpoint Batman. Yeah, Michael Keaton, the Flashpoint Batman, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Negan. And it's just it's so weird. Like when they made Joker, the Todd Phillips Joker movie. I was like, it turned out to be a good movie. It was such an odd decision to make a movie that isn't in the cinematic universe that you're trying to create.
Yeah.
And it was just the people at DC have just continued to make decisions that boggle my mind.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
Sir Stone says, I'm really hoping that Henry Cavill stays on as Superman. Such a cool dude. He wasn't a bad pick, really, for that role. Like, if you're looking for that look.
Yeah, he was good, and by all accounts, it looks like he's going to continue playing that role. So.
Yeah, because it's funny. You watch him in Mission Impossible. That's not his scene. I don't think. You know, he just had that clean cut sort of. He suited the role. You know what Superman's supposed to sort of embody, and it was. It worked as opposed to, was it Brandon Roth they had in the Singer attempted a reboot?
Yeah, Brandon Ruth.
Yeah, Brandon. Yeah, it didn't work. You know. I hope he stays on. It's interesting with DC because I'm a DC fan. Batman was my thing when I was growing up. You know, to the point that when I did my fifth form high school art portfolio, you had to produce a portfolio to get graded. I did Batman, and I did a whole lot of Batman artwork. I was obsessed with Batman, and so it's a bit of a shame to see what's happened to DC. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe move away from the franchise idea for a bit. Stop trying to imitate Marvel. Just build something organically, and if the characters come together, they come together. If not, just keep making good original films.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because they're making this Batman movie where it's like completely removed from all the other DC movies. It feels weird. It feels like there's no captain of the ship over there at Warner Brothers in terms of like DC. Like even the DC streaming service, like you just had the announcement this week that Stargirl, their new exclusive TV show, is going to go over to CW now, and it's like, why is anyone even paying for DC Universe streaming service? It doesn't make any sense. They should just fold it into HBO Max. Yeah. But Warner Brothers has proven that they just don't know what they're doing. Like the rollout for HBO Max itself was mind-bogglingly bad. Like it's still not on Roku or Fire TV. And I mean, that's like releasing a movie and not putting it in AMC theaters or Regal theaters, you know, the two biggest theater chains in the US. Yeah. So, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And it's just like, it feels like there's no competent leadership over at that studio.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's as we say in New Zealand, it's gutting. It's just sad because you know, if you love those DC characters, and they were the characters, Marvel have really sort of, in the cinematic realm anyway, they've really one up them. They've really shown them, hey, this is how you do it. But in the comic book universe, DC was always the front runner, and now it's all sort of fallen off.
Well, at least in terms of Batman, I feel like you know, DC has really stumbled on the movie front pretty consistently, but on the TV front, they've always been pretty solid. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Matthew, thanks for joining us. Look, someone's asked the question. They've said, Brendan, when is your next live stream? Well, I'm hoping to do one again next week. I must apologise to all the fans of this channel and this show. I have had such a phenomenally busy time. For those who don't know, in New Zealand, you're still in lockdown, is that right, Matthew? Are you in lockdown?
I wouldn't call it lockdown necessarily.
What would you say? You're in a... What sort of phase are you in? You there, Matthew?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it lockdown. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can. You just broke up briefly, but you didn't disappear that time.
Sorry. So like we're not technically on lockdown. Like Las Vegas is opening back up, but we still have a lot of the kind of precautionary measures in place, like the social distancing. We have to wear a mask inside businesses and establishments and things like that. But it looks like we're going to be opening up schools, and there are some casinos on the Strip that are open. Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of like mini lockdown, I guess you'd call it.
We've New Zealand has been out of ours for quite a few weeks now. We're a small island nation on the bottom of the world. We had a couple of hundred cases, and then we just went into this hard lockdown, and unsurprisingly, it stopped spreading. And then we came out of it, and so despite what the government didn't quite get right here, we're now in the situation we've got no community transmission. It's only at the border. People get quarantined and they get discovered with it at the border here. So we're sort of free to move about. But despite that fact, I've been extremely busy, and all through the lockdown it was exceedingly busy. So something just had to take a back seat. And when you've got a young family, You've got to prioritise. So I apologise to people who love the channel and the content. Someone said earlier on, man, I'm going to have to go outside if you don't give me some more content. So here's the plan, though, just to let you know. And Matthew was the first cab off the rank. I thought it was a great show, Matthew. It was the idea is I want to try and bring on people who are sort of in this fraternity, if you like, and bring on guests just to talk about, like we've done today, talk about who they are and stuff, and sort of entertainment stuff, where they come at things from. I don't want to say that because this would be too high self-appraisal, the Joe Rogan of this sort of weird little niche community we've got, but trying to get that sort of a more relaxed, hey, let's just talk type show going on. I've spoken to a couple of people already. Let me know if you'd like specific guests to come on. I've spoken to John from John Talks Star Wars. He's come back to me the last day, said he was keen to come on, so I might try and get him on the next couple of weeks. But send me guest ideas. But Matthew, I think this was a great show, and I've enjoyed having you on. So thank you so much for coming on. Tell people how do they follow you, mate, if they're not already doing that.
All right. Well, you can follow me on Twitter if you're on there at Matthew Kadish, Kadish. If you're on Facebook, I have a little group on there where we talk about movies. You can go there directly by typing in eggfbgroup.com. They'll take you right to my Facebook group. You can check out my novels on Amazon at kadishbooks.com. I just released a video today. I do like a series of deep dives into movies.
Oh, and he's disappeared again. Thank you for those comments coming in. Someone says you need a producer and an editor. You're right, I do. I really do. I need an editor. Content production is not a problem. It's editing is the time-consuming thing. Matthew, sorry you're back. You were just saying you disappeared briefly.
So sorry about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, so I do a series of deep dives into certain movies with with a panel of experts. It's called Roundtable Reviews. Yeah. And just today I released a video with Razor Fist. Yeah. And another gentleman named J.J. Hatter, where we discussed the 1994 Alec Baldwin movie The Shadow. We go really deep into that for about three hours. So if you go to kadishvideo.com, you can check that out. That's the new release, just dropped this morning. And I'd really like, if you're a big movie fan and you love talking about movies and kind of learning about movies, check out this podcast I do. We do a weekly podcast, me and my friends here in Las Vegas. It's called the Salty Nerd Podcast, and you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts by going to saltynerdpodcast.com.
Awesome. And
it's a really fun, kind of funny little podcast that we do, and it's meant to be kind of educational and interesting. So my girlfriend is a co-host, so we have some banter there, and then I got my two buddies, and we all come at movies from a different perspective, so it's always fun and interesting, and we try to tackle a new topic every week. So please check that out and subscribe. It's free to subscribe to a podcast, and it'll download right to your phone automatically. And we're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you guys want to check us out and determine whether or not you want to follow us, we'd really appreciate it.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Can I just say, Matt Vader said you can have me. Well,
he's one of my co-hosts.
Matt, anytime, mate, you want to come on, I'll happily put you on the show. That's what it's all about. Yeah, Matthew, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Just a couple of things. Stay there, Matt, because I'll talk to you in a second. I'm just going to take you off screen. But thanks for tuning in. A couple of people have said that they couldn't do super chats. Yes, I don't know what's happened there. There's a bit of some YouTube naughtiness going on, and they wouldn't let me monetize this video for some reason, even days ago. So maybe I'm on the whitelist or something. I don't know. But if you want to drop a little one-off, there's a PayPal link. There should be a PayPal link that you can see in the video description. If you want to start supporting regularly, then patreon.com. Let me point to the chyron. It's down here. /Left Foot Media. But yeah, as I said, if you want to do a one-off, the PayPal is the way to go. And I also don't have shekels taken out of my pocket either by YouTube on the way through. All of that goes directly to support what we're doing. This is a bit of a reboot for the channel, really. As I said, I have to apologise to those fans of the channel. It's just been such a busy period for me, so many demands on my time, and with a young family. For those who don't know me, I'm married, I've got 5 kids. So I'm doing my best to keep the local population thriving here. But that means that things get busy, time demands and everything else. It can be a real mission, as much as I love this. I've also started a new regular show on Monday nights called Monday Night Live. under the Left Foot Media banner, but it's broadcast on its own YouTube channel. Please, I'd love you if you're interested in sort of political, social, ethical issues. Comment. It's not movie entertainment stuff. And I've got guests from all. I've got an author from the UK coming on who's written a new book about postmodernism, who's coming on, for example. And I've got someone talking about Black Lives Matter this week. A guy who's a black activist from the States who doesn't support Black Lives Matter. So it's trying to extend and do a long-form conversation about issues and conversations you don't really hear in the media. So that's called Monday Night Live. Please, if you want to see that, it's the YouTube channel is mondaynightLiveshow.com. That's mondaynightLiveshow.com. Go to that URL and that'll take you to the YouTube channel. And you can subscribe and hit the notifications bell. All the episodes get posted up there. So it's been quite busy and quite demanding, and so my ability to actually, as much as I'd love to be able to produce more YouTube content has just been limited. I'm interested in talking to someone if you're an editor and you're able to work remotely, and if you're able to take filmed content that I give you and then edit a final product and receive a fee for doing that. I'm happy to discuss what that might look like. Then please, don't hesitate to get in contact, because I think that's something for me that would make all the difference in the world and would allow me to expand. My goal is to be actually doing this a lot more. My primary work is I run my own charity and I travel around, well, I used to quite a bit, Australia and New Zealand, speaking on sort of bioethics and cultural issues and doing a lot of conference engagements and things like that. But what I'd like to do is I would like to focus more on the sort of online content creation moving forward, because it gives me more time with my family and less time stuck on the road, and just do those speaking engagements as they come up and as I think they sort of focus on the bigger ones that I really want to focus on. So if you've got some skills, or someone's got some skills who might be interested in having that conversation with me, I don't know what that looks like at this stage, but I'd be happy to talk to them about that. In the meantime, you guys are awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and all going well, we'll be back next week. And I'll let you know again if whenever we're back what the timing's going to be. It just depends on where the guest is located as to what time we can go live to air. But I think the next cab off the rank will probably be John. And then by the looks of it, I think Matt Vader wants to come on. So so we'll sort of go from there and see how things fly. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in. People are asking me for the link. Let me see if I can dig this up right now. Poor Matthew's stuck in the background waiting for me to finish. Let me see. I'm just going to check this now to make sure I've given you the right. Yes, it is. So if you go to mondaynightLiveshow.com, let's see if I'll grab the YouTube link and post it in here and see if that works. Did that just appear in the comments? Hopefully it did appear in the comments. There is the link directly to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit notifications. There's some shows already out there. As I said, it's the more political, social commentary. It's got a bit more of a New Zealand flavour to it. But if you're interested in that stuff, that's where to go to get that kind of stuff. You guys are awesome. Thanks again for the support and for bearing with me through this challenging period of slow content creation. I started, as you know, prepping a whole lot of episodes of Pandemic Philosophy, and I've got a whole lot of them pre-written. And the next cab off the rank is going to be a video about I Am Legend, the pandemic philosophy and that. You guys are awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on the live show.